Hey guys, my name is Brandon and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you like what you see in here, you're more than welcome to hit the subscribe button so you stay notified every time I upload a new video. Okay, let's get straight on with today's video. Hey everyone and welcome back to Is That More Brandon. So in today's video, I'm actually going to be starting a new series. So this is a collation of my reviews from the Apprentice UK Series 18. So we obviously know what happened last year. We know there was 4 girls that got to the final: Megan, Marnie, Rochelle and Victoria. But obviously in terms of this year, we have started again with 18 new contestants, 18 new candidates, all potentially trying to be Lord Sugar's business partner. So the first episode I have now just finished watching, so I've seen the first person who got fired from the show. I'm going to explain how they got fired and obviously kind of how the first show went, and then do a review for every single week's episode, post it in this playlist, and yeah, hopefully you do enjoy my analysis of the show. Obviously these are all my personal opinions, so there's no one that's influenced me into, you know, saying certain things, or any brand deals that are telling me to mention certain things. So it's just me analysing all 18 people in the task. Obviously there'll be some weeks where some of them won't get mentioned because they're just kind of there, or they don't really do much, or, you know, they're just really good at what they're doing, so I don't really need to, you know, analyse that too much. But yeah, I thought let's go straight away. I've already got my notes from the first episode, so let's just go straight into the video. Hopefully it won't be too long, but it'll give you an idea of the 18 contestants so far and kind of my, you know, overall first opinions. I think I'm going to probably do that at the end of the episode. Obviously once the first person I've announced is fired, then I'll tell you what I think about the other 17 candidates. So let me just get my phone so I can get their names on the screen ready. Okay. So, beginning of the episode, obviously episode number 1, we kind of had the little intro clips, so you could kind of see them all walking with their suitcases, which I think it's just really well filmed and edited. Like, it's so cool to just see these, like, you know, their kind of faces, like walking down, like flicking their hair, and, you know, all these like sarcastic comments and things. Like, it is really cool because it does show you a side of these people, and I think all of the contestants this year look quite young. I think there's one older lady in there, or not older, but like she's kind of like in towards the 40s and 50s, I think. But I think the rest of them seem to be like under 30, or, you know, close enough to that young age. So yeah, doesn't really make a difference anyway. It's nice to see a group of young people get some sort of influence or platform to potentially get themselves a career, and if not through TV or through business or whatever, they may get some sort of other opportunity from the show anyway. So Lord Sugar obviously brought all 18 of them into the boardroom, and he kind of just did a little bit of an intro into some of them. So we first had Asif. So he is a doctor, and he says he's got the 3 Bs, or the 4 Bs in terms of business. So he said his Bs are beauty, brains, body and business. And Lord Sugar said to add the word, well, B-U-L-L-O-C-K-S to that as well. And Asif basically said he wanted to concentrate on a business that had vitamins, because obviously he's a doctor, so he wanted to do something that was to do with like health and things like that. Sam explained that she's kind of the Del Boy Fitness. I think she is a fitness coach. Yeah, so she's a fitness coach online for mainly women. I think it's mainly women who either before they give birth or after they give birth. So that's quite an interesting type of job as well. Like, it's a specifically female fitness coach, and obviously, yeah, specialising in a particular type of fitness. And then you had Paul and Paul. So you had Paul, who is a pie maker, and Paul, who is a dentist. So Paul the pie maker, I think, is the redhead, and Paul the dentist is Dr. Paul. So I'm trying to probably call him like Paul and then Dr. Paul. That's probably the easiest way to do that, actually. Yeah, you got Paul B and then Dr. Paul. Amina, she's been a pharmacist for 10 years. She wants to go into a business where she's selling skincare supplements. So she's been doing that for 10 years. And I think Lord Sugar made a little joke here that he's kind of like, well, I've got a pie boy, I've got a doctor, I've got a dentist, I've got a pharmacist, like, you know, I'm all set to go. And Amina actually said that here she's already making X amount of profit. And Lord Sugar basically said to her, well, hang on, why are you here then? Because you've already got a successful business. And she said, I want you. So maybe it's one of those things that she's doing well, but with the backing, she could do even better. So yeah, didn't really get much about her there, but we kind of understand what her background is. Again, we had Phil. He's also a pie owner, and Lord Sugar basically competed him against the other Paul, saying that Phil was the 2020 Supreme Pie Champion of 2020. So, you know, it was a family-run business. I think he said it started with his nan or his grandma back in like the 1930s. So it's just been a business that's just continued to go on in the family. And then Faluso, she was the last one that we were introduced to. I think that's how you pronounce her name. Yeah, Faluso. And she basically said that she wanted to teach young people about business, have a business about business, basically. And she explained that she felt like she was the Mary Poppins of business, with Lord Sugar being the spoonful of sugar that he joked he would add to her business. For the first task, we found out that they were going to be giving some sort of client tour, and they're going to be involved with some sort of team building activity and exercise, and then obviously various food and drink, if that was obviously going to be something on their menu. So straight away we had boys team, girls team, and usually this is where Lord Sugar, you know, makes them go out. They go into a little room and then they decide who their not prime minister, oh my god, project manager, sorry, I can't even get the words out. So for the boys team, they kind of put Verdi, so he is kind of like a DJ, music producer, that sort of thing around the world, and obviously this, he basically said, is his type of gig. He does events all the time, so he put himself forward, everyone kind of agreed. And then for the girls, you had Onyeka, so yeah, she basically also put herself forward. I'm not really sure what she does or what her kind of career is, but she was basically confident enough that, you know, she's also run events, so I think she put herself forward for that. And basically we had a voiceover that basically said what once used to be a Scottish manor has now turned into a sightseeing place of the Highlands. So I guess it maybe was used as an actual castle or whatever it was back in the day, and I guess now it's like one of those tourist attractions in Scotland that, you know, people go to explore, or, you know, learn things about the Scottish life, or, you know, see how history has developed and what things are still there from the past. So straight away for the girls team, Onyeka said that she felt like they obviously had to decide whether they wanted to have like a land tour or a water tour. And she basically said, well, purely because of the fact that, you know, she can't really swim, I think she mentioned it here, or she wasn't really sure of it, she thought they should go for a land tour. And then I think two of the girls jumped in here, so both Maura and Rachel. I think Maura said first that in Scotland people don't want to just be walking, they want to actually explore, so actually a water tour would probably be a lot better. Rachel also jumped in and they both gave each other the eye, because I think when they did a vote, most people actually voted for that option as well, so they kind of got what they want, and they kind of also knew that that was the better option. In terms of the boys team, Verdi then basically took control of his team. I guess the only criticism I would say here is that he didn't really let anybody speak, literally not at all. So he basically went in straight away saying, I want a land tour, we're going to be doing abseiling, I'm a DJ, I've done corporate events, things like that. He said to his team he wants them to under-promise and over-deliver. So, you know, tell them that they're not going to get as much as they think they're going to get, but then actually give them exactly what they want and more. And yeah, I basically just made a note here that he talks a lot and the team were quiet. He basically said that Paul was going to be his... he basically said that Phil was going to be his sub-team leader, but we'll get to that in a second. With the girls, Onyeka said that potentially for the Highland Games it was going to cost about £500, and Flo then jumped in and said, well, actually they could run the activities themselves without having to worry about that £500 cost. And then Raj said that obviously that activity couldn't be weak, with Sam adding that they obviously don't want people to offer or have refunds at the end of the game. So I think the girls here were kind of deciding, we don't want to spend too much money, we want to kind of try and do things ourselves, but also at the same time we do want to make sure that we, you know, are making a profit. And then back to the boys team, yeah, so Verdi basically said that him, Paul, Trey and Stephen, so Pie Paul, we're going to be going to the corporate client, with Phil obviously being sub-team leader, and they were all just about to leave the room, and then Paul basically jumped in and said, well, hang on, we need to discuss the prices before we go anywhere. We don't know what our budget is, we don't know what we're spending on food and drink, we don't even know what drink we're getting, and I don't even know if they ended up discussing something at this point, but I think they basically said, don't worry about getting anything too expensive, and also make sure there are drinks. So that was kind of it in simple. That's kind of how Phil understood it. For the girls team, Sam was the sub-team leader, so Onyeka basically said to her that the budget for the food was anywhere between £10 and £25, and alcohol-free preferably, just because obviously then you can save on the costs. And I guess it's smart thinking here as well, because if you think about it, if you're spending a little bit more on the activity and then you don't have alcohol, you're kind of equalising yourself, rather than spending on expensive activity and also expensive alcohol. You're limiting your costs just a little bit. And then Sam basically said that they kind of need to include alcohol because, you know, it's all part of the luxury experience. And in the taxi when she was with some of the other girls, she said, I'm going to explore the options. I'm not going to say yes or no to alcohol, but I'm going to have a look, see what the sort of price range is for that. I think the boys offered £350 per person per food and drink order for their activity. And then in terms of the girls, so Onyeka, Flo, Rachel and Maura all went to the client. They started the price at $375, and I think here Flo kind of took the lead. So she's the salesperson, she's the recruiter, so I think she does have the most gift of the gab, kind of the voice. So she started the price at $375, managed to get them down to $250, and then I think somehow managed to get them back up to $280. So it was $280 per head. No alcohol for the event was obviously advised by the actual clients themselves. So hopefully Sam and her sub-team don't then go and buy alcohol, because they've already kind of, the other half of the team have found out that they don't really do alcohol for these types of events. And then Verdi, in his sales pitch, basically explained that he's a music producer, and when they were speaking to their clients, they basically said they wanted something that involved music and something that was fun, something that obviously they had high expectations for. And then Trey also jumped in to say he was a performer, so they've kind of got the two best people for that opportunity. Steve then jumped in with the money, so price-wise, he said potentially they could do £440 per person. The client said that they'd be happy to pay somewhere between $200 and $210. And I think before Steve could actually get a word in, I think this is where Paul, the pie Paul, just jumped in and offered $245, saying, oh, just so I can eat beans, can we go at $245? And then they actually ended up agreeing on $240 per head. So I think here, it wasn't necessarily Verdi who jumped in, it was more Steve who jumped in with a price, Paul kind of undercut him, and then Verdi, I guess, kind of just went along with it rather than letting Steve carry on. So a bit of confusion, a bit of complication. I think that's going to come back and bite them. I don't think it's going to come and bite Paul just because he was, I guess, being a bit funny and, you know, just kind of offering an option rather than saying this is the final option, but then nobody else jumped in on that. So that's why they were stuck at 245. With back to the girls, so Raj, Noor, Amina and Sam were all looking for the different food and drink options. They went for the medium type of food. Faluso was there also. And Raj said that maybe they should go for the mid-range. Sam explained that the cheapest that they'd be able to do was £36.50 per head, not her lowest price, but obviously it was a nice meal, and I think they tried to negotiate from about £50 to 36, so they still got some sort of discount. And then Amina jumped in and said, well, actually, Onyeka said that £25 for food was her maximum. So again, they've kind of over budgeted here for both the food and the activity. So I don't know if that's going to help them or hinder them later on, but I guess it depends on how well they sell the rest of the tour. As long as they get tips and no refunds, they should be all okay. Back to the boys. So you had Phil, Dr. Paul, Oliver, Jack and Asif, who were all doing the food testing, I guess, to kind of see what foods they should go for. I think, again, they also went for the medium food. I think Phil said potentially they were looking for £20 per head for 10 people, so only looking to spend about £200. And the chef basically said we can do £40 per head is the final offer, so kind of upping that by double. And then in terms of the alcohol, they kind of said we're not going to do alcohol, water on arrival, and we can order some orange juice and some lemonade. So again, a little bit of a mistake here from the boys, because I guess their client did want alcohol, but Phil basically went in with the idea of, you know, we didn't really discuss drinks, we didn't really discuss prices, so I'm just going to do, again, what's the cheapest, similar to what the girls did, and just not order alcohol. And he also added that it wasn't discussed in the morning brief. So, you know, again, that could come back and bite them, but again, both boys and the girls team have their little issues, so let's hope it doesn't affect them all too much. Again, in terms of Onyeka, so she basically decided that she didn't want to do the activity because obviously she can't swim. So although she went on the team to try this water sport, it wasn't really for her. So she jumped out and just kind of watched the other three girls get on with it. And for the boys, Jack managed to secure a £270 per person deal for learning Scottish dancing for about half an hour. So again, a lot of expense for just half an hour of dancing, but again, it's something that, you know, the clients would probably appreciate. I think that's kind of like £27 per person, so £27 times 10 people, 270 quid. It's a lot, but as long as they get the money back somehow, or in profit or whatever else, then again, they should be absolutely fine. Again, back to the girls. So Faluso basically explained that they ended up obviously paying £500 for the activity. They wanted to try and get 180 per head. and I think this was for the team building exercise, which was, I think, was bowls. So she basically, yeah, like I said, she was basically told a price of 500, and the professional basically said, well, I'm one of the, you know, most professional athletes in Scotland, so I can do it £180 per person if I'm not there, and also, you know, you're doing it on your own. I can provide you all the equipment, but if I'm not there. So they basically agreed to that. So again, they got like a £200 or £300 discount on that. And then Nor basically added saying, well, actually they could have built this themselves rather than paying 180. All they needed to do was get some logs, you know, a couple of sticks and some stones and stuff, and then you just hand make it yourself. So £100 or £280, whatever they spent on that, was kind of a bit of a waste of money, but at the same time, at least they had it covered, some sticks and some stones. So yeah. Sam also added that they took on the activity to meet the needs of the clients. So when they went back to talk to the other girls, the fact that they planned the activity, it was just kind of something to show that we've actually done something rather than have kind of like no plan. And then Maura jumped in and said that she wasn't happy, and as of now they only kind of really have £600 of profit. With the boys, Phil and his little sub-team basically said that they didn't get alcohol, and Verdi said that there was alcohol discussed in the meeting, so, you know, he was quite disappointed straight away that they hadn't got any alcohol for the event. And then obviously Onyeka told her girls that obviously she's not able to swim, so she wanted to switch with somebody for the activity. She ended up switching with sub-team leader Sam, and Sam basically, I think at this point, all of the girls on the non-swimming team either couldn't swim or didn't speak up, and Sam basically said, look, I can swim, I don't really like doing it, it's kind of my worst nightmare, but I'm going to switch because, you know, no one else is speaking up, so I'm going to just go for it. And then for the boys team, they arranged, or Verdi basically discussed that they would be at the venue ready for lunch by 2 o'clock with food ready to be served at 2:15. And then I think Phil just confirmed, do you want the food ready by 2 o'clock or are the guests going to be arriving at 2 o'clock, just to get a complete understanding of the situation. And then again, back to the girls. So Flo basically said that there was going to be 4 different water stops, and they actually gave Sam the easiest one. They needed to work out a few facts about the river, obviously why the river was brown, and then hashtag let's go low and go was kind of their phrase. And then the boys weren't able to light their fire, so Trey wasn't able to do that for some reason. And I think Phil and Asif were both in the kitchen. I think Phil was kind of the chef here, so he was the cook. Asif, Dr. Asif, was obviously trying to make shallots, and I think he basically said to the camera that he's a doctor. He's been in difficult situations. He's been in heated conversations and situations, so he knows how to deal with difficult stuff. But I guess he just kind of said that Phil could have just got off his back a little bit rather than just being on him full stop. So he did speak up a little bit and say, look, I'm not stupid, I understand what I need to do, just let me do it, kind of thing. And then back to the girls. Again, the girls were they were kind of making 2 things at once. They were making a crumble and they were also making fish cakes, but for some reason one of the girls left the crumbs or the crumbles from the crumble on the side, and I think a couple of the girls used that thinking it was breadcrumbs for the fish, so they've basically just got fish covered with crumbles basically, or fish covered with crumbs of the crumble. So yeah, there wasn't really what they were supposed to use. They thought they were using breadcrumbs, and then obviously turns out they weren't. And then Karen said to the camera, you know, the girls are adding crumble to a fish cake, so you know it's going to taste very sweet, and it's not going to taste what a crumble's supposed to taste like, and it's not going to taste like what a fish cake is supposed to taste like. And then we saw Verdi dancing to music, and I think this is actually now part of the activity day. So we finally got all the clients here, so you know, all the guests, I think there's about 10 guests on each one, they were all here. So Verdi and his little group, they were all doing like the outside tour, they were all dancing to some like music, and then for the girls team, their little group obviously watched her kind of, you know, jump into the river, and she basically said, look, if an Essex girl can do it, anyone can do it, which I thought was quite funny. And then back to the boys. So we've got a new character now in the scene. So we've got Oliver, and he was obviously not really in his depth. He was out of his depth, should we say, when he was in the kitchen. He said he's not really a cook, he doesn't really know what he's doing there, and he had to basically measure the different ingredients for the chocolate brownie to put that in to obviously make sure that was ready for the guests. Phil was obviously kind of talking to him, and I'm not sure if he was just being stupid, but he didn't know that TSP was tablespoons. He also thought that the tablespoon was a teaspoon, so he was kind of getting everything confused. and he also forgot to add the flour into the mix before he put it in the oven. So yeah, he kind of made a brownie without it actually being a brownie, so he had to remake it all over again, but thankfully it was, well, I guess it was okay the second time round. And then obviously, yeah, back to the girls. So yeah, when they did deliver finally the fish cakes to the clients, they weren't happy because some of them said actually the fish cakes were not cooked, and about 3 or 4 of them said, this doesn't taste like fish cake in breadcrumbs, this tastes like just crumble that should be on some sort of dessert rather than on fish. So yeah, they were a little bit underwhelmed. And yeah, Raj went back and said to the other girls that she made a crumble with the crumbs, left the pot of the crumbs on the side, and then I guess Noor kind of just spoke up a little bit and was like, oh yeah, and I guess I thought that was breadcrumbs. She had a quick sniff and she was like, oh no, this isn't breadcrumbs. So she kind of admitted herself that she put the breadcrumbs, the non-breadcrumbs crumble on the fish cake, but I guess, yeah, obviously that was quite an important part of the task, but it's not what potentially could have made them lose the task. It was more that they were spending so much money on things, and also they couldn't really cook, so it was kind of 2 losses in one. And then, yeah, obviously Sam was the one that had to go back outside and apologise and said that, you know, we've got a really, really nice crumble on the way, so hopefully that will make up for it. So back to the boys, obviously no alcohol ordered, and the Verdi's group were also 45 minutes late because they were behind the schedule, and he basically came storming into the kitchen with his little sub-team saying, I'm not happy about no alcohol, with Steve basically adding on that their #1 goal is customer satisfaction, let's go and get the customers some alcohol. So I think at this point it was a last minute decision to add that extra, you know, funding for the alcohol, just to kind of say we have alcohol. But I think at this point they'd already ruined it for themselves because they were 45 minutes behind schedule, you know, everything was very, very planned out, so by 3 o'clock they didn't really have long left. And then obviously they had activities to do and dessert and things like that. So yeah, I think while they handed out the dinner, which I think was like sausages and mash or whatever it was, one of the women basically just said, you know, firstly, the sausages were not cooked. Secondly, is there any alcohol so we can have something to drink? And also that they basically were on a bit of a time limit because they had a 3.5 hour drive home. So yeah, they basically just were not very happy about that. And then, yeah, obviously back to the girls team, they took out the crumbles, and one of the girls, I think it was Maura, basically said, oh, I told all the clients it was local cream, and Faluso basically just said, yeah, it's not local cream, it's from Tesco's. So obviously as long as they don't tell the clients that, then they're all good. And then, yeah, with the boys team, yeah, they said the sausages were cold all the way through, and yeah, we kind of just kept going back from the boys' day and the girls' day. It looked like the girls' day was a little bit more successful, but then again, their food was also not great. But after the food, the girls managed to do bowls, tug of war, and obviously some of the Highland games, and they said it went really, really well. Even Noor said that there was a lot of good energy. And then back to the boys, they were doing some Scottish dancing, and the only problem was they only had 4 minutes to do the activity because the other little half of their team were half an hour late, and then that woman, like I said, they all had to travel back home, and about 3.5 hours of travel. So the fact that they tried to squeeze a 30-minute activity into 4 minutes just didn't work. There was absolutely no time to have dessert, so Oliver couldn't even, you know, show off his brownie skills, I guess. And then even Jack tried to jump in at the end and basically say, look, if you want to give any tips before you leave, that would be great. If anything that you did enjoy during the day. And they basically were just like, no, we're not gonna, you know, tip you and whatever. So they got in their car and obviously left. And then Verdi basically said to his little group, he said, look, for 2 bottles of wine and 1, you know, glass of beer or whatever, it was 40 quid. So the fact that Phil said it was £9 for just 1 glass of wine was completely outrageous, because that's not it. It's £9 per bottle, not £9 per glass. So first in the boardroom, we went to the girls team straight away. So Onyeka said that they budgeted firstly for the price of £385 per person. They managed to get it down for £265, and then I think in terms of food, she budgeted between £10 and £15 per head for the food. Sam basically explained here that that was an unrealistic budget. They ended up being offered £60 but got it for about £36.50. Lord Sugar basically said to Onyeka that it wasn't really a good idea for her to switch. Although she couldn't swim, she really shouldn't have even put herself on that side of the team to start with. She should have just gone to the other side, because now she's, I guess, you know, she's switched halfway through, so she's kind of half out of her depth. And he basically added that actually the clients did enjoy the walk. They did enjoy all the facts and, you know, the watery rides and things like that. And then Amina basically said that she was delegating tasks in the kitchen, and a few of the girls jumped in straight away here because obviously that's not what she did. Both Raj and Noor both said, well, actually, you didn't delegate anything. We all just worked collectively together. And actually, if anything, it was a team working thing. It wasn't anyone was overruling anyone else. They were all just working together. So if they all did something good, it was all because they did something good together. And if something bad happened, it's because they all did something bad together. And then to the boys team, Verdi said that he initially started with a price of $450. They managed to close at $240. Steve said they lowered the price too quickly. And Phil basically explained that there was no direction whether they were or were not going to have alcohol, with Trey saying that Phil had mentioned it was £9 per glass, not £9 per bottle. So again, Phil basically was just here a bit like confused, I guess. But then he kept saying, well, did they get alcohol in the end? The answer was yes. And then again, Trey basically said, well, yeah, that's because we kind of put our head out and said, actually, we're going to go and get them the alcohol. So we're going to go and get them that. Verdi said there was lots of smiles on the walk and there was lots of encouragement, excitement, things like that. And then Jack jumped in and said, well, actually, there was a deadline at 2 p.m. for the food and drink, but they were obviously late. And Paul, Dr. Paul said they spent £270 on Scottish dancing, paid all that money, and they couldn't even do the activity. Phil also said that there was no tips from customers, everything was prepared, and yes, although they didn't have alcohol, they eventually did have alcohol, but they were still kind of complaining at the end anyway, so there must have been something from the other side that they didn't appreciate or like. And then, yeah, we found out with the results. So Karen was with the girls team, so they basically spent £1,671, and they also managed to sell some photos as well. They made £1,266 of profit, but 40% was refunds claimed by the clients and the guests, so they only ended up making a profit of £122.43. With the boys, they spent a little bit more, so they spent £1,756.40. They made £643 profit, and again, the weird thing here is that Asif actually started cheering, because he kind of was like, oh my god, yeah, we made £300 profit, but obviously they kind of hadn't made £300 profit, so he kind of got his numbers completely confused, and they basically said, just let Tim continue and actually, you know, give off the rest of the numbers. So Tim went on and said that although they made £643 of profit, 52% of that was actually then refunded, so they ended up having a minus £506 loss as their total. So they actually were like £600 down to what the girls got. So the girls surprisingly won that challenge, even with their dodgy cooking and, you know, crumb situation. They still managed to win. So all 9 of them went straight to the house. And then, yeah, Flo said it was nice for them to win. Faluso said, well, she went behind the bar and was offering one of the other girls a drink as a bit of a joke. And she said, cheers to winning more tasks. And then with the boys team, again, Lord Sugar kind of asked, well, what is it that you think went wrong? Who is it that you think is to blame? Oliver said that the failure with the task is due to time management. Phil said that the other half of the team arrived at 2 p.m. Well, if they would have arrived at 2 p.m, everything would have been provided, and, you know, they would have been actually able to do that activity that they had planned for. And Phil basically said, if I was going to, you know, say whether anyone did or didn't do anything to the task, I'd say Oliver contributed nothing to the task. So yeah, they were kind of all having that little bit of discussion off camera, and I think actually to the camera. Verdi said that the actual loss was a really, really bad loss. Steve said that being late was just as bad as not having alcohol. And Phil said that eventually in the end they got alcohol, but they still weren't happy. So that was a really good point from him, the fact that actually, yes, they forgot about the alcohol, they got the alcohol, but the customers were still not happy. So whether the alcohol was late, on time, whatever, they got that part resolved. It was the actual everything else that was they were not happy with. And Trey basically said that the failure of the task is with a negotiation, which is from the other side, so Phil and his little sub-team. And Dr. Paul said that it was obviously due to poor time management as well. I feel like he was kind of being talked over a little bit, but I guess he managed to get in a few words, basically saying, yeah, the time management was the problem. And Oliver basically said he was doing cooking similarly to what some of the other boys were doing, and he basically did as much as what like Jack did, for example. And Jack said, well, actually, I don't agree with that. Like, I don't agree that what you did and what I did is exactly the same. I think we were, you know, doing very different things, but also one of us was actually doing something and the other one really wasn't. So in the end, Verdi had to decide which 2 people he wanted to bring back into the boardroom. So as of what I saw during the episode, I thought he was going to bring Oliver and Phil. Oliver, because obviously kind of really didn't do anything, and then Phil, because he was a sub-team leader, he kind of didn't agree with the fact of no alcohol. But he ended up bringing back Oliver and Steve. So Steve was actually on Verdi's little sub-team. He's really hot, by the way, as well, so that's one of the reasons I was a bit sad he got brought in. But obviously he brought Oliver back, and then as soon as he said Steve's name, Steve kind of said me, as if like, what? Why are you bringing in me for? And then, yeah, they all had a little discussion, Karen, Tim and Lord Sugar, and Karen basically said about Verdi that he's an events guy, and, you know, he was given an events task, and it's not a good sign if he's not able to do the thing that he boasts that he's so good about. About Steve, Tim basically said he walked away with a bad deal, and then Karen also added about Oliver, if you have some of your colleagues who are questioning what you did in the task, it's not really a good sign, especially if you're in this process. So in the end, the three of them came back in. Verdi explained that negotiation was important within the task, so the fact that that wasn't done, I guess, and that a deal wasn't done to fulfill, at least, you know, saving a little bit of money. Steve basically agreed and said, yeah, negotiation is the important part, but he did say that he tried to explain, he was going to explain why the £450 price was important, but he kind of got spoken over by obviously Verdi, and I think it was the other guy, the other pie guy, Paul, who kind of just jumped in with a £200 figure. So yeah, Steve said, I knew what I wanted to do, but I couldn't do it because people were talking over me, and I guess he's not the sort of person to want to talk over other people. Verdi then also said about Oliver that he wasn't really sure what Oliver did in the task, and Oliver basically said here, well actually I would have preferred to be in the corporate side, I would have preferred to go to the client, and then Verdi added, well actually Oliver didn't say anything, he stayed quiet, he didn't say he wanted to be on the other side, and then Lord Sugar here basically said, you know what, I've had enough, like I'm just going to analyse and summarise the situation. He said that Steve seems to be a great talker, and you know, when someone brings the price down, I guess it is quite difficult for you to then speak up or, you know, fight back or whatever. So he basically just said, yeah, Steve, you're staying in the process, like we've kind of given you another chance. He basically said that Verdi claims he wants to be an events organiser and actually lost Lord Sugar money in an events task. And he said that with Oliver, there was a few colleagues who didn't really know what he did in the task. So as difficult as it was to want to keep Verdi, he kept Verdi, he fired Oliver. And he just said to Verdi that actually, you know what, you took the balls to kind of put yourself first to take on this first task, and you know, you just kind of need to just sort yourself out going forward, otherwise, you know, you might be next on the chopping block. So yeah, Oliver said he was disappointed to go out first. And then obviously back at the house, Dr. Paul said he wasn't really sure why Steve ended up going back into the boardroom. So I guess all of the boys collectively were a bit like, well, hang on, why did you take Steve in? Phil said, I'm pretty sure we're not going to see Verdi again. And then obviously Steve and Verdi came in, Oliver went, and yeah, Lord Sugar basically said, look, although Oliver was a really, really nice guy and he seemed like a really nice chap, the fact of in one task where there are so many people, if you're not able to say one little thing that you've done, it's not really a good sign. It's not really a good start to, you know, being one step closer to being a business partner. So yeah, it was nice to see Oliver wishing everyone luck in the process, and he kind of said it is also worse to go out first in one of these types of shows, but I guess that's the thing. I guess he's a nice person, but sometimes being nice is just not good enough. So yeah, that is it for my first review of The Apprentice Series 18, Episode 1. If you did enjoy my review, don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. And until my next review, thank you for watching, and I won't be fired anytime soon, so we're going to see who gets fired in Episode 2. And until then, thank you for watching, and goodbye.